Welcome to another deep dive. We are really thrilled you are spending time with us today. You're probably here because you love the big ideas, the unexpected connections and those sudden aha moments that just change how you see the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Because finding the thread that connects, say, a Zen parable to a golf champion or an ancient Roman diary usually takes um, hours of digging through dense material. And we know you do not want the fatigue of information overload.
Right, exactly. You want the insight.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we have done for you today. We have an incredibly diverse stack of sources to go through, pulling from 1800-year-old Stoic diaries,
hmm
stories of baseball legends, modern art philosophy, and, even a poem written by a second-grade girl.
It is, a massive spectrum of human experience we are looking at today. What becomes apparent when you lay all these sources out side by side is that these entirely different voices, separated by centuries and disciplines, they're all pointing toward the same challenging reality.
And that reality is our mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring a central theme that might feel uh, a little uncomfortable when you first hear it, but ultimately it is the most empowering realization you can have. The theme is this: greatness, presence, and genius are built, not born. Okay, let's unpack this. We should start by looking at the story of Laszlo Polgar.
Great, the Hungarian educator.
Yeah, he famously raised three of the greatest chess players in history, his three daughters. When you look at the source material, the entire world looked at these girls and immediately slapped the label of natural prodigies on them. People assumed they were handed some mysterious magical genetic endowment at birth.
But Polgar absolutely refused to let the world use that word.
You just wouldn't have it. Why was he so fiercely against the idea of them being natural prodigies?
Well, he built his entire life and the lives of his daughters around the conviction that genius is educated, not born. He viewed greatness as a daily practice. It is a long, patient, sometimes grueling accumulation of effort, attention, and will.
He proved that genius is something you manufacture from the inside out, day by day, rather than, a lottery ticket you scratch off at birth.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is why the idea of the natural prodigy makes us so profoundly uncomfortable when it is challenged. We collectively cling to the myth of the natural because it lets us off the hook. Think about the implications of that for a second.
Oh, for sure. Because if genius is purely a genetic endowment that you either get or you don't, then you are completely relieved of the burden of trying.
Right. If you aren't a genius, you can just shrug and say you weren't born with it. Polgar's truth ruins that excuse completely. It forces us to face a much more demanding reality, the recognition that who you are is something you are always actively constructing.
That puts the responsibility right back in your own hands. The burden of becoming is entirely on you. And that concept actually forms the absolute foundation of Stoic philosophy in our stack of sources. We see this explored heavily in the writings of Epictetus.
Yeah, he talked about this concept of the ruling principle, but when you just hear the phrase ruling principle, it sounds a bit abstract.
It does sound a bit academic.
Yeah.
So let's break that down into something highly practical. Imagine the ruling principle as the inner CEO of your brain.
I love that framing. It is the part of your mind that is capable of stepping back from a situation and separating an external event from your internal reaction to it. Constructing yourself actively starts with the clear awareness that you possess this guiding reason.
And, more importantly, that you have the power to choose to use it. It is an active, daily management of your own mind.
We see Dale Carnegie distill this idea perfectly in our sources when he notes that only the prepared individual deserves to be confident.
Because confidence isn't a magical aura you are born with. It is the direct, measurable result of the philosophical and practical work you put in beforehand. The preparation is the work.
And speaking of that preparation, I think General James Mattis's observation in our notes is spot on here. He points out that his best new ideas consistently come from very old books.
Yes, when you look at a source like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, you realize quickly that you are not reading dusty academic theory. You are reading a highly practical survival manual.
Here's a Roman emperor who essentially had absolute power. Nobody could tell him no. So he had to write down instructions for himself on how to control his temper, how to deal with incredibly difficult people, and how to resist being corrupted by his own ego.
The old books know that human beings are still doing the exact same things we were doing 2,000 years ago. We are still striving, grieving, failing, and desperately seeking validation.
Right, Marcus Aurelius spent a massive amount of his life analyzing our human obsession with how we appear to others, just analyzing the ego from every conceivable angle.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Marcus Aurelius wrote about what he called the strange arithmetic of human vanity. He pointed out this massive, glaring contradiction in how we operate.
We all love ourselves more than we love other people. We are the absolute center of our own universes. Yet somehow we care significantly more about other people's opinions of us than our own opinion of ourselves.
He joked that if a god suddenly appeared and demanded that we shout every single thought aloud as it occurred to us, we wouldn't survive a single day. The sheer weight of our vanity and our crippling insecurity would destroy us.
We surrender our inner lives to the court of public opinion constantly. It is a self-manufactured prison. We trap ourselves in social comparison and completely forget that we are the ones holding the key.
We spend all our energy constructing a polished avatar for the world to see, rather than cultivating that ruling principle Epictetus talked about.
The poet Xana Keithley offers a brilliant philosophical antidote to this arithmetic of vanity in our sources. She writes a very simple phrase: your heart is enough.
You are smart enough, funny enough, interesting enough. Crucially, the parts of you that you struggle with, the parts you desperately try to hide from the world out of shame, those are enough too.
That sounds beautiful, but I can imagine a listener hearing your heart is enough and writing it off as empty, positive thinking self-help.
Yeah, how does that actually function as a rigorous philosophical position?
It functions as a philosophy because it requires action. It is the active claim that offering who you actually are to the world is exactly what the world needs, not the polished, vanity-driven version you think people want to see.
It is a stubborn refusal to let your struggles, your past failures, or your insecurities become your primary self-definition. But dropping that baggage is incredibly difficult work.
It really is.
That idea of dropping the baggage leads directly into a parable from Anthony de Mello in our sources. The story is devastatingly clear. A student goes to a teacher and asks, "How shall I attain eternal life?" The teacher replies, "Come into the present."
And the student is confused by that. He says, but I am in the present, aren't I? I am standing right here.
And the teacher says, "No, because you haven't dropped your past." The student gets defensive, arguing that not all of his past is bad, some of it's wonderful. Then the teacher delivers the absolute knockout blow. He tells the student that the past is to be dropped, not because it is bad, but because it is dead.
That parable outlines the core mechanics of presence so well. We don't miss our own lives because we are inherently lazy or malicious. We miss our lives due to chronic inattention.
We are in the habit of living absolutely everywhere, except right here, right now. We are constantly dragging the corpse of the dead past around with us.
Or we are projecting ourselves into a hypothetical future that doesn't even exist yet. The Japanese Zen teacher, Shunryu Suzuki, understood this deeply. In the sources, he talks about experiencing this presence in the physical body before the mind even has a chance to intellectualize it.
He uses the physical act of sitting in the full lotus position as an example.
Let's actually walk through the physical mechanics of that metaphor because it grounds a very abstract concept.
All right.
Try to picture someone sitting in the full lotus position. You cross your legs so tightly that your left foot rests on your right thigh and your right foot rests on your left thigh.
Physically, they become completely intertwined.
Exactly. Where does the left side end and the right side begin? You really cannot tell. Suzuki called this physical state not one and not two.
Not one and not two. That is a wild concept to wrap your head around. It almost sounds like a riddle.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Suzuki is talking about the oneness of duality. He is refusing to split the world into easy binary categories. Our body and mind are not two completely separate things, but they also aren't exactly one homogeneous thing.
We live and we do not live. We die and we do not die.
Right. These are not logic puzzles that you are supposed to solve. They are paradoxes that you are supposed to inhabit. And here is the vital part for the listener. The present moment is the absolute only place where you can inhabit a paradox without it collapsing into a false resolution.
The tension between opposites can only open up into something larger if you are grounded completely in the present. I was looking at the sports sources we gathered, and I wanted to see how this concept of presence actually holds up when the stakes are terrifyingly high.
The Tom Watson story.
Yes. I was shocked by the early career of golfer Tom Watson. He was known as a guy who choked. He simply could not close out tournaments when he had the lead. The pressure of the future outcome would just break him.
So how does a guy with a reputation for choking end up winning 39 PGA Tour victories and 8 major championships?
He had to learn the mechanics of presence we just talked about. Watson went to his mentor, the legendary Byron Nelson, for help. Nelson gave him advice that sounds almost laughably simple on the surface.
He told Watson to slow everything down, Walk slower to your ball, focus entirely on the literal shot at hand, and completely ignore the outcome of the tournament.
Nelson was teaching him presence applied to athletic performance.
Yeah.
He was forcing Watson's brain out of the hypothetical future, worrying about the trophy, the media, the potential embarrassment, and forcing it into his physical body in the present moment.
Let's translate that for the listener. If you are heading into a terrifying job interview or a massive presentation that could make or break your quarter, Watson's lesson isn't to sit in your car and envision the glorious success of the outcome.
It is to focus entirely on the literal next step. Open the door, shake the hand, slow down your walk to the podium. Watson stopped living in the future, executed the immediate task, and completely transformed his career.
It proves that handling pressure is a learned trait. Managing pressure is built. And similarly, the ability to process failure is built. But learning from failure requires you to actually look at it with brutal honesty.
The sources use the biblical story of Peter to illustrate this. Peter was absolutely certain he could handle the pressure. He swore he would stand by Jesus when the authorities came. He had total confidence in his own natural loyalty.
But he was wrong. He failed completely. He denied Jesus 3 times, exactly as predicted.
The synthesis here is that the failure was not the end of Peter's story. It was a necessary interior event. It stripped away his vanity and his illusions about himself.
And it showed him exactly where his capabilities actually stood.
It functions as a diagnostic tool. Failure strips away the ego and leaves you with raw data.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. When you fail, whether it is a failed project at work, a collapsed relationship, or a personal goal you abandoned, do you receive that failure as a final condemnation of your self-worth?
Or do you receive it as precise, valuable information that you can use to redirect your efforts? Failure, despite all its ugliness, is one of the only instruments sharp enough to cut through our self-deception and show us the truth about our own commitments. Facing that kind of radical honesty about our own limitations is exactly what we need when we look at our daily lives and our schedules.
This brings us to Austin Kleon's brutally honest accounting of what it takes to build a meaningful life. He is an artist and a father, and people always ask him how he manages to do it all. His answer is incredibly refreshing. He says, I don't.
He points out that life is about trade-offs. His formula for the artist's life is work, family, scene pick 2. You simply cannot have everything in its fullest form simultaneously.
You cannot be out at every social event, crushing it at work, and being the perfect, ever-present parent all at the exact same time. We suffer from so much modern anxiety and fear of missing out because we refuse to accept that finitude. But acknowledging that finitude is not a tragedy, it is actually what makes a finite life meaningful.
When you choose to honor one duty, you are necessarily honoring it at the expense of something else. That forces you to be incredibly intentional. You have to be clear about which duty is yours to honor in this specific present moment and let the rest go.
Choosing is liberating.
That intentional choice brings me to one of the most powerful stories from this entire stack of sources. It is about Buck O'Neil. He was a veteran of the Negro Leagues, an incredibly talented baseball player who spent decades shut out of the major leagues simply because of the color of his skin.
The systemic racism he faced literally cost him the prime of his career.
Now, cut to late in his life. He is 93 years old, sitting in the stands at a baseball game. A ball gets tossed into the crowd toward a young kid, but right before it reaches the kid, a grown man reaches out and snatches it away.
The crowd naturally starts booing.
The person sitting next to Buck is absolutely seething with anger at this guy. But Buck just smiles. He looks at the situation and says, maybe the man has a kid of his own at home. Maybe his child is sick.
He completely refused to condemn a stranger, even when the stranger appeared entirely in the wrong.
So what does this all mean? How does a man who was robbed of his career, robbed of so much by the cruelty of the world, maintain that kind of spirit at 93 years old?
It means that Buck O'Neil's cheerfulness was not a form of naivety. He was not blind to the cruelty or the unfairness of the world. He had experienced the absolute worst of it firsthand. His cheerfulness was a profound form of courage.
He actively refused to let bitterness be his ruling principle.
He chose to see life as a gift, regardless of what it had taken from him. That response in the stands wasn't a spontaneous accident. It was his genius. And that genius was built across a lifetime of practice, day after day, choosing grace over anger.
It all loops back around to such ultimate simplicity. We have navigated through Stoic philosophy, the mechanics of Zen Buddhism, high-performance sports psychology, the reality of finite trade-offs, and it all lands in the exact same place.
In fact, there is a poem in our sources written by a second-grade girl named Eliana Navarro that captures it perfectly.
She wrote, "Treat others how we want to be treated. Never be mean. Always be kind. Live with joy in our heart. Spread joy around the world."
A second grader managed to get to the absolute bottom of it faster than most philosophers do in an entire lifetime of academic study.
We might smile and call it cute, but she just outlined the practice of an entire lifetime. The sources reinforce this simplicity over and over. Ann Landers, the famous advice columnist who read letters from thousands of struggling people, noted that warmth and friendship are the most yearned-for commodities in the entire world.
And legendary basketball coach John Wooden, a man who spent his entire life building greatness in young athletes, said from the other end of a long life that love is the most powerful four-letter word.
This is the grand synthesis of everything we have dug into today.
Laszlo Polgar showed us that genius is not a genetic lottery ticket, it is built. The Stoics showed us that this building process begins with self-awareness and actively managing our inner CEO. Suzuki showed us that reality is meant to be inhabited in the present body, not divided by a wandering mind.
And Buck O'Neill showed us that receiving life as a gift is a daily, courageous choice.
They are all, ultimately, giving us the same instruction manual. Who you become is entirely a function of how you choose to pay attention, day by day, hour by hour, shot by shot.
There is no shortcut. There is no magical destiny that you are just waiting to have revealed to you. There is only the very next moment and the specific attention you decide to bring to it.
And if you're listening to this right now and thinking to yourself, I understand the concepts, but I am just not ready to start building yet. I need more time or more resources or a better environment. We have some challenging news for you.
The writer Brianna Wiest points out in our sources that the idea of being ready is a total myth. There's absolutely no such thing as being ready. You just have to do the thing, and the readiness emerges in the process of doing it.
You just have to step into the present, because the present is the only place where greatness can actually be constructed. You cannot build genius in the dead past, and you cannot build it in a hypothetical future.
The material of your life is only available to you right now.
Which leaves us with this final, powerful quote from our sources, speaking directly to you, the listener. Life takes place now. Start living now. There will never be a time when it is not now.
So we want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over today as you go back to your work, your family, and your daily routines. What dead past or what anxiety about the future are you currently using as an excuse to avoid the daily, moment-to-moment work of building your own greatness today? Think about it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.